Picture a perfectly cooked steak, sizzling, fat melting into the fire. We grill cows, pigs, chickens every single day without a second thought. Millions of tons of it every year without a single question asked. But you never see lion on a menu, never see wolf chops behind the butcher's glass. Never a tiger fillet, never a leopard steak, not once, not anywhere, not in any culture on Earth. Most people think it's about danger or some old cultural rule nobody ever questioned. They're wrong. The real reason has nothing to do with the hunt. It's a biological law, unbreakable. And your body has been secretly enforcing it your entire life, long before you ever thought to ask why. So let's say you didn't know any of that. Let's say tonight you actually sat down to a full lion steak dinner, seared, seasoned, plated exactly like the ribeye you had last week. The first bite wouldn't kill you. It would just taste wrong, tough, stringy, faintly musky, nothing like the tender cuts you're used to, because this animal spent its whole life sprinting and starving, not grazing in a field. That's the easy part. Somewhere in that meat is a lifetime of concentrated mercury or heavy metals quietly absorbed from every animal this lion ever ate, and every animal those animals ate before that. If the meat wasn't cooked to the exact right temperature, there's a real chance of parasites sitting in the muscle tissue, waiting. And if you got unlucky, there's a small but real chance of catching something your immune system has never had to deal with before, a pathogen that jumped species the same way SARS did. One dinner. 3 different ways for your body to pay for it, days or years later, for a plate of meat that didn't even taste good. That's not a coincidence. That's a warning system working exactly as designed. And it starts with a number that quietly controls every food chain on Earth. In 1942, an ecologist named Raymond Lindeman found something strange. Every time energy moves up the food chain, 90% of it just disappears, burned off, wasted, gone. A cow eats grass, keeps 10% of that energy. A wolf eats the cow, keeps 10% of that. Leftovers of leftovers. Do the math on a lion. A healthy male needs about 15 pounds of meat a day just to survive, and most hunts fail completely, sometimes 3 or 4 in a row. A pride can go the better part of a week without a kill. Now scale that up. Feeding one captive lion for a year takes dozens of animals, and every single one of those animals had to be grown, fed, and raised first, on grass or grain that took its own toll on the land. Stack that cost across an entire population and you understand why no civilization in human history ever built its food system around an animal that only eats other animals. Wolves need hundreds of square miles of hunting territory just to feed a single pack. The same land, farmed for grain, could feed thousands of people. Predators are, pound for pound, some of the most expensive meat that has ever existed. So why not just farm them, the same way we farm cows? Controlled pens, managed breeding, no wasted energy chasing prey across open land. People have actually tried versions of this. The problem is, the 10% rule doesn't care whether the predator is wild or fenced in. You still have to grow the prey first and feed that prey before the predator ever sees a meal. Farming a lion sustainably means farming an entire second layer of animals just to feed the first layer, doubling your land, your water, your feed, your cost, for a fraction of the meat you'd get from just eating the prey animal directly. It's the reason there's no such thing as a lion feedlot, and never has been in any economy in human history. The only way around that math isn't a better farm. It's skipping the farm entirely. But energy isn't even the scary part. The scary part is what's hiding inside the meat itself. Toxins don't disappear in nature. They stack, quietly, invisibly, generation after generation, in a process scientists call biomagnification. A small fish absorbs a trace of mercury and survives fine. A bigger fish eats 100 of those small fish and inherits all of it at once. A shark eats 100 of the bigger fish. The poison multiplies, every single step, until the animal at the top is carrying a concentration the animal at the bottom never even came close to. This is why doctors tell pregnant women to avoid swordfish, why they warn about shark meat, why entire government agencies publish mercury guidelines just for a handful of predator fish. These animals sit so high up the chain, their tissue becomes a chemical archive of everything beneath them. We saw this exact horror with bald eagles. DDT crept up through fish, into eagles, and started thinning their eggshells until entire nesting seasons collapsed. Ospreys and peregrine falcons went down the same way. At the same time, poisoned by a chemical they never touched directly. Then there's polar bear liver. Arctic explorers who ate it out of desperation didn't just get sick, their skin peeled, their heads split with headaches so severe some couldn't stand. One nutrient, vitamin A, so concentrated in a predator's liver that it flips from essential to lethal. And that's just the chemistry, because even a perfectly clean predator has one more trap waiting. Predators don't live calm lives. A cow grazes in the sun all day, doing nothing more strenuous than walking to the next patch of grass. A wolf sprints, fights, and starves between meals, running down animals that fight back. That stress floods its muscles with cortisol and adrenaline, and hunters who've eaten wolf or mountain lion will tell you the meat is tough, stringy, almost bitter, nothing like the tender cuts you're used to. But taste is the least of your problems. Predators hunt the weak, the sick, the old, the easiest kills available, which means they're eating disease before you ever touch the meat. Bear is one of the most documented sources of trichinella on Earth, a parasite that burrows into muscle tissue and can shut a body down if the meat isn't cooked all the way through. No exceptions, no shortcuts. And sometimes it's worse than a parasite. The 2003 SARS outbreak traced back to civets sold in wildlife markets in China, animals that most likely picked the virus up from bats. A predator carries everything its prey was dying from, stacked up over an entire lifetime. Every bite is a bite of that whole chain. So if predators are this costly, this toxic, this risky, why do we eat some of them at all? Because we do. Salmon, tuna, cod, they're all predators, and they're some of the most eaten animals on the entire planet. The difference is degree, not a hard rule. A tuna sits a couple of rungs up the chain, not 5 or 6. It's short-lived, so it hasn't had decades to concentrate poison the way a shark or a lion has. Some Arctic cultures ate bear too, historically, but always cooked hard, always eaten with real caution, sometimes wrapped in ritual and rules about who could eat it and when and how much. The exceptions don't break the pattern, they prove it. Lower on the chain, younger, more abundant, survivable. Higher, older, rarer. The cost shows up on your plate one way or another. So how did people who had never heard of parasites or mercury poisoning know to avoid any of this? They didn't, not consciously, not with knowledge. Something much older did the work for them instead. Long before science, humans built a shortcut. A gut-level disgust toward the meat of hunters, wired in deep, below language, below reasoning. Offer someone a bloody wolf steak right now, and their stomach reacts before their brain even finishes the thought. Psychologist Paul Rosen spent decades studying disgust and found it shows up early in childhood, tracks closely with culture, but keeps surfacing in eerily similar patterns across societies that never once spoke to each other. Kosher law bans clawed predators. Halal law bans them too. Neither tradition copied the other, separated by continents and thousands of years, and yet they landed on the exact same boundary. The ancestors who felt nothing eating predator meat paid for it, in poison, in parasites, in diseases their bodies had never met before. The ones who felt sick just looking at it lived long enough to pass that feeling down the line, generation after generation, until it reached you. You inherited the feeling. Not the reason, not the biology, just the reflex. And now, for the first time in human history, that old rule is getting tested in a completely new way. Some lab-grown meat researchers have experimented with cultivating cells from exotic and predator species precisely because it erases the whole problem at once. No hunt, no bioaccumulation, no parasites, because there's no wild animal involved at all. Just cells multiplying quietly in a steel tank. If lion meat ever does land on a plate at scale, it almost certainly won't come from a lion. It'll come from a lab, built cell by cell, specifically engineered to dodge the same chain of energy loss and toxic buildup that kept the real thing off your plate for the last few 100,000 years. The cow sitting in front of you tonight isn't an accident, and it never was. It's the end result of a very old, very practical bet your ancestors made without ever writing it down. Stay low on the chain and let the predators keep what they've concentrated.